Here's your opportunity to listen and learn from the most successful people driving growth and success in Palm Beach County and beyond. Welcome to the Business in Paradise Palm Beach podcast with Cary Stamp, founder of Cary Stamp & Company, Principled Wealth Advisors. Cary and his guests share stories and insights from Palm Beach County's most successful executives, entrepreneurs, and community leaders. Learn how they made it to where they are today, what principles guide them, how they mentor others to achieve success, and more.
Welcome to the Business in Paradise podcast. I'm your host, Cary Stamp. I'm broadcasting from my offices in Tequesta, Florida. I'm a certified financial planner, and the goal of the Business in Paradise podcast is to interview amazing and interesting people in what I consider paradise. That's the Palm Beach and Martin County areas where we live in South Florida. I have a fantastic guest today on the podcast. It's my good friend, my golfing buddy, and kind of a guy who served as a longtime mentor to me, Ray Taylor, who is a founder of Excell Refrigeration. Ray built a beautiful business in South Florida, and he even expanded the business that he built to another operation in South Carolina. Ray Taylor, welcome to the Business in Paradise podcast.
Thank you, Cary. Glad to be here.
Ray, tell us a little bit about how you started in the refrigeration business and what it was like when you first were getting started in that business.
Well, I came out through high school, through trade school, so I'm not a college graduate, so to speak. So I'm known in European terms as a hands worker. And so that's where I got my humble beginnings and started working on air conditioning, refrigeration systems for about 7 or 8 years until I had the opportunity to roll out on my own and start the business in 1985.
So 1985, you start your own business. How old are you at the time?
28.
You're 28. You go off on your own. You've been doing this for 7 or 8 years, and you're like, okay, I'm starting a business. How did that come about? What inspired you? Did you have a customer when you went off, or did you just say, I'm doing this on my own? I got my toolbox in my truck.
It wasn't quite that simple. I was working, obviously, in a trade for 7 or 8 years, and I ran across a business associate of my father who had just started a business doing supermarket refrigeration work. And he was in Palm Beach County. He was actually out of Melbourne, and he'd finished a job over in Fort Myers and was doing a job down here in Palm Beach County when I ran across that he was in the area. And because I'd known him for so long, as a friend of my father's, he was looking for help, and I was looking for opportunity, and I ended up going to work with him for about 4 years. So he was bringing teams and some guys down to do some jobs that we were working in Palm Beach County from Brevard County, and worked with him for about 4 years. And he just kind of asked me one day if I would be interested in taking over the operation that we were working in Palm Beach County. We had about 5 or 6 guys, including myself. And he had some more work going north of him. And I'm like going, going into business for myself, it wasn't something that I was even considering, to be honest. And so I had to kind of think about it and decided to take the opportunity.
So you're an accidental entrepreneur.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And when you started the business, was it smooth sailing to begin with? Or were there times when you had to worry about, how am I going to pay these guys that are working for me? How am I going to find the next job? What was that like?
The short term for that would be entrepreneurial terror. And that's kind of what I experienced. It took me a while to understand where that term came from. Once you experience it, you understand what it is. But I took over when we took over the project. We had a couple of construction projects that were in progress. We had 3 supermarkets that were under contract for service. And I was pretty much the only service tech that we had. The rest were construction pipe fitters. And we started. Basically, we worked the first 6 or 8 months just finishing the jobs that we took over. That was in November of 85, and I didn't sell my first contract for a construction project until June of 86. So I was really nervous to land that first deal. Yeah.
So you had some ongoing income or a little bit of income from the construction projects that you were wrapping up,
Right, right.
but
Yeah, he took part of the deal when I bought in was to pay him for what his expenses were in the projects, and I would finish up and take whatever I could make off it at the end. So that's kind of the way it worked. So yeah, I did. My paychecks kind of stacked on the dresser for several months.
all right. And so at this time, do you have a young family? Are you married at the time and you have kids?
Yep. Yeah. Yes. The wife and I were second time married. So we had a child from our first marriage. And then we ended up having two more.
And so your wife, Lisa, was she working in the business at that point or was she working somewhere else?
Yes, she was. She was actually our bookkeeper in the Palm Beach County office, keeping things going. And then when we rolled on our own, she became my obviously my full time bookkeeper, and making sure that we were paying all of our taxes and our payroll and all that stuff was getting done. And she was pretty good at it. Yep.
So the two of you, you're working together, you're in your late 20s, you got little kids, and it's harder than heck. There's not very much money rolling in. I tell this story, and I've probably mentioned it before on the podcast, that when I first started my business in Chicago, there was a time when I couldn't make the payroll without having to actually go borrow some money. And my father gave me a very short-term loan. Fortunately, he was there to be able to backstop me. But there was a moment when Sharon and I looked at each other and we didn't have any money in our checking account to go buy groceries. So we literally went to the change jar that I kept on top of the dresser to find out how much cash I had available to buy groceries. I'm a financial advisor. I'd been in business for quite a few years at that point. This was 19 or 20 years ago, but I'd still been in business. And I should have known that when you're starting a business, you need to have a lot of capital. I thought I did. I had a very substantial amount of capital. It just didn't last long enough. So, Ray, what was it? I mean, was it like that for you? You're kind of struggling to get started and your back's against the wall and I got to make this work.
Well, I can tell you, I had a lot less than you'd think I did when I started this deal, because the deal was obviously for the guy to take his costs and assets, which wasn't a whole lot. He wanted 35, just to give you an idea, roughly 35 grand to just to spin off. And I didn't have the money. So I talked to Dad and he second mortgaged the house. And I borrowed 45,000 from my father, and gave my boss the 35 grand, and I gave me a whopping $10,000 of working capital, and that's what I started with.
That's an amazing story, and it's very nice that we both had fathers, and I'm grateful to my dad, Jack, who I was able to fall back on at a time in my career when I truly needed it, and he and my stepmother Nancy were very generous to help me out at that time. So Ray, you start this business. You've got this supermarket chain that you're doing installation and construction work for, but eventually the business kind of morphs into more of a service business plus a construction business. Tell us a little bit about the progression of how the business grew.
Well, the business grew, but the business and the grocery store and the service and construction side was kind of changing and evolving as they were growing. So they were doing things one way for a particular period of time and decided they were going to change up. At the time that we rolled into this, there was one company pretty much doing all this particular customer's work. We were able to pick off the service accounts by doing the construction. And they said, well, if you give us a good price and we do the construction project, we'll let you keep the store. And that's how we kind of started the 3 stores. And then, you have to understand that you have to learn to accept change, and nothing ever stays the same. And over time, this company faltered, and they wanted some diversification, and we ended up picking up more and more stores.
The company that faltered was a company that was providing service to the supermarket chain.
They were doing service and construction. Both of us were most everybody that in the business will do the install work and do the service work too.
Okay. So you picked up some business because they weren't doing their job and you were Johnny on the spot. and they're looking at you and going, "Hey, this guy knows what he's doing."
Exactly. Where, you try to provide a competitive advantage and a good quality product, and hopefully they want to keep using you, and provide incentive for the competition for the rest of the field too, to keep their prices down.
So take us through from 1985, which is 36 years ago. You start this thing. Take us forward 10 years. In 1995 or somewhere around that time period, what did the business look like? Had it grown much by then?
Oh yeah, we were probably and it had 20, 25 stores at that point. Maybe 25, 30 people. When we started, we only had 4 or 5. So we continued to grow. At the time, Palm Beach County was really, really screaming. We had the 2 major chains in the county. We didn't do the service work for one of them. We did all their construction and renovation work. And between the two of them, they were 50% of my business either way. And they were popping up grocery stores and remodeling them almost on every other corner. And so it was just for us to, I had no idea how fast we would grow because they were growing and competing against each other. So we trying to figure out how we're going to do all the work. And my team, my guys are just saying, "No, don't worry about it, boss. Just get the job. We'll get them done." And so we're just running just fast as we can to try to pick people up and get these projects turned out on time.
And Ray, I hear the same story from so many successful entrepreneurs, especially in a period of rapid economic expansion. And it seems like in South Florida right now, we're going through this crazy time where it's almost impossible to be able to buy a house because there's 12 bidders. And it's almost impossible to be able to get a contractor over to your house to do any work because these guys are so busy. So as I think back to the growth that you had with Excell, it seems like it's very similar to the experience that we're going through today. So you mentioned that you called yourself, I love the term, hands worker. So, and I know that one of your big passions is kind of helping people that are going through trade schools, because that's essentially, you went through, you started a trade, you built this phenomenal business. Where did you find these people that ended up becoming your service people and your construction people?
Well, yeah, you get them from various walks of life. They come from some of them go through trade school and looking to get into the business. Some have no idea what they're doing. They come in and basically some of the best people that we've had have come in totally green, had no idea. And if they just like working with their hands. So if someone has the initiative and wants to learn and has some technical skills or mechanical skills, I should say, righty tighty, lefty loosey, so to speak, we can teach you and we can show you how to do it. And that's what we did. We did a lot of on the job training and quite often I heard from some of the people that they really like working for us because we spent the time to teach them and show them how to do it. So just take a lot of pride in that.
Bring us to today. All right. So today you've got Excell Refrigeration. You're in South Florida, and you got an operation in South Carolina. What's the South Florida operation look like? How many people are working there? Who's running the business?
Okay. Yeah. We roughly probably about 90 people working for Florida operation. The owner and CEO now is George Morse. I turned it over to him, an inside deal last year because it was time for me I felt like I needed to move on. Reaching that time. So they're doing quite well. And I'm, still working as a consultant advisor with them, helping them out. And so that's going quite well. And then South Carolina is an operation that we started about 10 years after, say, in the early 90s. Moved my kid brother up there along with another tech that worked with me for 5 or 6 years. He was ready to move on. He actually was thinking about going back to Buffalo, if you can believe it. But I just made them an offer to go up to Carolina. I wanted to reinvest my what we were doing. We were making a lot of cash, and figure, what are you going to do with it? I said, let's roll it into what we do. And I was able to talk to my customer and to give me a shot up in South Carolina because they were having trouble finding adequate service and construction contractors in the area. And so I made them an offer. We put it together. I moved those two up there and offered them a 10% stake in a new venture, a separate corporation. And squeezed a few bucks out of them for some par value stock and gave them ownership. So, and they're still there today working, that outstanding team.
And how big is that team now in South Carolina?
They're roughly in about 75, 80 employees. So they serve the entire state of South Carolina and up into Charlotte, North Carolina, perimeters of Georgia. So pretty wide and expanded territory. And they're doing, probably about 12 million a year.
So from a very small investment, which at the time obviously did not seem like a small investment to you, in 1985, we've now got employment for 170 or 180 people that is feeding them, that's providing these families with an income, that's giving them health insurance, and that's giving them a job to do every single day. Ray, you must feel pretty blessed, I guess, and pretty proud, not only of yourself, but your organization and Lisa, your wife, to be able to put all this together. How does that make you feel when you look back on this journey?
It's definitely an extraordinary accomplishment. And I actually had my head in the trenches and working so hard all the years. It just kind of happened without even realizing it. And you just go. I mean, the customer calls you and you go, and it's just the way it rolled out. And I've been blessed with some really great people, my brother and Lisa. We've been just getting it done, just hard work, a lot of hard work.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I know that you did a few years ago was that you kind of formalized a training process inside of the firm so that you could bring in new techs, because this was not an industry where people were just taught how to become a refrigeration person somewhere. So tell us a little bit, is Excell University that you created? What's going on with that?
Well, it's kind of a start and stop thing. We call it XLU. We had various things we put in there called Next Man Up as part of an apprenticeship program. And so my team is keep looking for ways to innovate, to do better training. We're far from where we need to be with it. The big issue that we had, when I first started, we had technical centers in Palm Beach County, vocational schools. And that's where I got my start, although I didn't spend a lot of time there. But we had them, and they provided training, but they shut down all those programs, so they're not available anymore. They have the ones that you can get the government loans for and what have you, but there's nobody out there teaching the skill, and so we have to do it ourselves. That's the only way we're going to get people.
One of the things that I also heard you say was kind of a motto for the company was, it's cool.
It's cool to make stuff cold.
It's cool to make stuff cold. That's pretty neat. Is that on the side of your trucks?
Yes, it is. It is. And actually that was something that I didn't even realize I knew about. And it actually speaks to my company team and philosophy as something that's fun to do. I'm part of a Vistage team, and we had a speaker to come and talk to us about marketing. And I have, all these years never had a salesperson or a marketing plan. We just specialize in what we do as our little groove, and just they send the plans, we send the price, and then send the team and get it done. So listening to this guy, and he's maybe realized at the end of the program that I need to market to my people. So once you market to your people and put out a product that people can enjoy making a living and learning how to do something productive, then they become good employees that you can use to sell that product to your customer. So, but the cool to make stuff cold came when I thought about my beginnings and, working in a shop and learning the trade and throwing the equipment up on the table and piecing it together and plugging it in, and all of a sudden it's magic. This thing's cold. And I go, man, that's cool. So it's just the science of refrigeration is pretty unique, and it's kind of a cool thing to do. So that's why I went with it.
So you mentioned Vistage, which I know you've been part of for a very long period of time. And for our listeners that are unaware of what Vistage is, give them a little bit of background of what it has done for your business, and how you've used Vistage as kind of a outside resource.
Well, I guess before I got into Vistage, what got me going with the business climate, and once you start a business, and I've heard some of other people talk about this before. Just you're the man, and there's no one else to ask when the problems and situations arise for where you go next. Your back's up against the wall, so to speak. So my faith got a lot stronger at that point, I can tell you that. But I got involved in trade associations, Palm Beach County Air Conditioning Contractors and the Florida Air Conditioning Contractors. I went through those chairs and past president of both associations, actually, and then spent time at the state and national conventions where you hang out with other contractors and even the local contractors. You thought there was some superstar at some point when you're working stiff. You realize that they put their pants on just like you do. And if that guy can do it, you sure as heck can do it too. And that's kind of where I built my confidence. And so I did that. And then after about 10 and 12 years of doing that stuff, I kind of took a permanent sabbatical from boards and committees. It's working all these days and night shifts and then going to all these meetings was a drag on my family and my time. But a Vistage member that was my CPA called me one day and says, I'd like you to come to one of our meetings. And I did. And it was like a deja vu moment for me, because I was able to re-experience what I was doing with the trade association thing. But this was a little different because I was able to spend time with other CEOs and owners of businesses, roughly 15 or 18 different companies, and share experiences. We weren't competitors. So we could talk about everything, but we all have the same issues with dealing with operational businesses and insurances and personnel issues and
people,
those type of thing. People, it's all, everything we do is people business. And it was just great. I mean, right off the get-go, the first year I hired a CFO as recommended, and just a lot of great ideas. And it was actually quite a blessing, to be honest with you. Yeah.
So you joined Vistage, and how long ago was that? Approximately
about 8 years ago.
About 7 or 8 years ago. And Lisa, until you essentially kind of stepped aside from the day-to-day operations of the business, was Lisa there pretty much the whole time, the whole run?
She's been out for, I don't know, 8 years maybe. So, but she's always had her foot in the door and helping out when they needed something. Got up to, close out the year and that type of thing. She could log in or come into the office and help pound some stuff out for them. So she's always had her foot in the door, and as an owner, you always want to have your pulse on making sure things are getting done to protect your own interests. So yes, not in the office day to day, but for sure keep an eye on things.
And for folks that don't know my story, my wife Sharon and I met working together at the same investment firm in downtown Chicago. And we ended up actually working together on our financial planning business in the early years. Our daughter, Sarah, came along, and Sharon took a number of years sabbatical to raise Sarah. But she's back in the office now. She works here part-time and does really some nice things for the firm, where she make sure that all of our clients, their birthdays are acknowledged and their anniversaries are acknowledged. And if they're sick, we send them a wellness basket and things like that. And she's really, really invaluable because she knows the clients, they know her, and it's just great to help build a relationship. However, sometimes when you're in the office together and then you go home together, you take stuff home and you want to try to separate it. How were you and Lisa able to navigate that and work together and then go home together at night and feel like, it was a workable relationship? How'd you guys do it?
Well, we got along very well, and probably because of Lisa, because she's easy. She's really easy to get along with, and is very understanding and patient. But it takes two. It takes two to do it. And, she pretty much, was a back office person and just kept grinding all day long on numbers. And I was out all day long. So we didn't really see each other face to face all day long. But it's still, when you come home, you have business to talk about. Sometimes, you don't get our kind of a stand. I don't know how you put it. When we wanted to talk shop at home, we would talk as long as we both agreed that we wanted to. If either one of us decided we didn't want to talk business no more, we kind of like hold our hand up and like simulate punching a time clock, like I'm clocked out. And so what either one of us would clock out, that was it. There was no more conversation. And I think that was probably the smartest thing that we ever did, because, we didn't have to sit there and have to quarrel about anything. We've never had a quarrel about work per se. I mean, that was anytime serious, but
Well, that's a great
yeah,
agreement. I'm
yeah,
punching out. And along the way, you raised 4 kids together.
yes,
Yes. And both of you worked in the business.
yes.
Any of your kids in the business today?
Nope, nope, nope. They didn't really have that, didn't have that desire and interest. No.
So, Ray, speaking of kids, let's go back to when you were younger. All right. You mentioned that your father was there for you. He was available. What kind of business were your parents in?
My mom was a homemaker, so she never worked. And my father held various jobs. He was always looking for a opportunity to get in some kind of business where he thought he was going to take over the world, and but he never had financial capital in order to do it. But he, raising 4 boys was a challenge for mom, and but dad always he always had a job. He was always provide for the family, so we never went without. We always had a home. We always had vehicles. We always had food. So he always provided for us, but he always had this dream of wanting to do something. And I think he kind of lived it through me at the point when he wrote the check for me. I ended up 45 grand on a 12% loan, 20-year payback term. I ended up paying him back about 10 years after the fact, 100%. The day I was sworn in as the state association president, I brought him on the stage during my opening statements and thanked him for his contribution to our success, and gave him back the rest of his money. So worked out.
That's awesome. And Ray, where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Florida, down in South Broward area, and then moved up. The family moved up in the middle of my high school years, and in 1972 to Palm Beach County.
You went to high school right here somewhere?
Yeah, in Lake Worth.
Okay. So you live here, you start your business here. I think for a while you lived on, was it Manalapan?
Was Hypoluxo Island.
Hypoluxo Island. Okay. Right down next to Palm Beach. And now to make sure that you have plenty of time to get out and play some golf, you're living near your golf club in West Palm Beach, right?
That's correct.
That's awesome. And Ray, when you were a kid, okay, you're growing up in Broward County or Palm Beach, did you ever imagine that you would create a company that would employ 180 people, that you would be able to have the lifestyle that you're able to enjoy today, and just kind of have complete freedom around how you spend your time?
No, not ever, not even for a second. As a young kid, I was probably like most kids. We didn't have electronic games, so we were outside playing ball. But most of the time, my brother and I, we were running around the neighborhood with our lawnmower and edger, making money, cutting grass, and then doing newspapers, and then simple thing going through the working in restaurants, busboys, and that type of thing. And then but I never thought it was my senior year in high school, going to senior year, and I said I need to figure out what I'm going to do. So I said, go in the air conditioning business. My dad worked in a wholesale parts and air conditioning industry. He wasn't a service tech at that time. He'd been probably 25 years of doing that type of work. So that's what I went out, and I went through tech at that time. I only went there my senior year. You could go full time. You could go full time and exempt all your academic classes. And I wasn't a great student, by the way. To me, D meant diploma, and that's kind of went. I did enough to get by. I took all the easiest classes I could get. I hated school, and I wasn't a rocket scientist, I can tell you that. But I went in, hooked up with a guy, and we were buddies going to tech school. You have to understand, in those days, tech school was, let's say the misfits in school kind of got shoveled that way. It's like, get out of my classroom, go to tech school. And so you dealt with those guys too, when you're doing that. But the very first weekend in my senior year, they were doing full-time tech school. The longtime instructor broke his ankle on Labor Day weekend, which was the first week of school. So we had a substitute teacher. And so nobody was learning anything. So me and my buddy Tony, we just kind of hooked up. We go fishing all night at the bridge, and then we go to tech school the next day, and we would teach ourselves. And that's what I did. And then after the first of the year, I was eligible for SIE, which is School Industry Education, which typically means you can go to work full time if you can get a job and you get a credit. So I went to work 8 to 5 from January all the way to June, took my graduation credits, never even saw a classroom. So that's how I got my foot in the door. That's where vocational was at the time.
And this was through the public schools.
Yeah, public schools.
Okay.
Yes.
And right now that's not an option for most kids.
No.
I know there's some things, there's like the marine industry, the marine high school, but it's very small. And then there's the, some art schools and the G-Star school and the southern part of, or down towards West Palm Beach. But I don't really think that we have much in terms of a technical school for plumbers or electricians or refrigeration people anymore. So that's too bad.
Yeah, it is. It's not good. The Palm Beach air conditioning contractors do support an apprenticeship program that we had several guys go through over the years. And some of my best techs came through that program. It's a 4-year program that the contractor pays for. And so you're employed and you get to learn that way. But it's a 4-year program, 2 nights a week.
Ray, as I've been in the business, one of the things that I've thought about over the years, and every year I try to think of somebody new to kind of look back on and thank them for how they've helped me along the way. I've had a lot of mentors, people that have really been instrumental in getting me achieve things, or to sometimes just tell me that my thinking is stinking and that I need to make some changes, and that I don't always have all of the answers, but they guided me in a very gentle manner with a firm hand. As you think back on your career, are there a couple of special mentors or somebody that you say, geez, this person really had a major impact on my life?
Well, the guy that I spun off from was, like I said, was an associate friend that my dad, we spent time with. We'd go up and visit him. And so I would come because I was one of the kids, I had to go. But he was he was kind of my mentor because the guy was high energy and hard work. And he did a lot with little. He never had a lot of money, but he was very creative and he could make something out of nothing. And he could, he'd get it running. I don't care one way, he'd figure it out. And that always impressed me. And it kind of gave me a road to follow, a great roadmap. When you start a business, I always said one of the things that kind of bugged me as I'm going down that road and thinking about starting my business, I'm like, well, what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of boss are you going to be? You think about all the people that you work for in your career, and some of them you like and some of them you didn't. So those are the people that influence you as you're coming around. And I'm going, who am I going to be? Who am I going to emulate? I'm like, who would I want to be like? And I couldn't think of anybody. But what I found out in the long term was you just have to be yourself. You have to find yourself and then create your own identity. And I've always wanted to be to do the right thing. What my success story and as far as how I survived this whole growth stuff was how do you make it work? It's you see you treat your customers better than anything you can do. Give them what you said you're going to give them. Give them the best product and service you could possibly give them, and be fair about everything. And then you treat your people with the utmost respect and give them what they need in order to make decent living. And those types of things, if you do those things, and I use logic. I don't have an MBA, but you use common sense and logic, and you put those things together and you treat your customer right and you take care of your people, then your business will survive. And I tell them that. And we run up against the wall in our business several times where competitors are taking our people for a few bucks more an hour, and work gets slow. What do you do? And I just say, we're the best. we're going to continue to deliver the best, and things will take care of themselves. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
And
Ray, that's great advice. You just, I think the idea that you have to just be yourself as you deal with your team is uh, holds true here. I think my team will tell you that I like to teach, sometimes perhaps a little bit too directly, but that's who I am. I give advice all day long for a living, and when I sit down with my team, I want to make them as strong, as smart, and educated as they possibly can be. And let me ask you this. So, if you were talking to a young person, maybe this 28-year-old version of you, but they're here today, and they're thinking about going into the business that you just kind of finished up your career in refrigeration, what advice would you give to them about starting a refrigeration business today that you think would make them as successful or even more successful than you had over the last 36 years?
yeah, it's an interesting question. Everyone says you can't do today what you did before because it'll take a lot more cash than I had, I think. But money aside, I mean, they can get into a business, they can buy a business. There's always ways to get around that. But I would say, just like this, what I just said. I mean, you have to be yourself, and you have to be straightforward and honest with your people and your customers, and you just have to figure out how you're going to be better than the next guy, and drive your people to understand that.
And I would imagine you also need to maintain relationships. You had two very substantial customers, and those had to be delicate relationship balances over the years. And in the supermarket business, I know from personal experience talking to other people that work in that industry that they don't like to pay a lot of money for things like construction or service. And so you need to make sure that whatever you're doing is delivered in a way that you can actually make a profit on dealing with those types of folks. How important is the ability to maintain those relationships and to be able to negotiate with those big customers?
It's very important, but the problem is coming to the point where a lot of times you don't have ability to deal with them anymore. They're gotten so big that they have so many intermediaries that block you from the people you need to talk to. Fortunately for me, the two big companies that I work for, I had close relationships with. Now, one of them has pretty much gone to the wayside, and I haven't been dealing with them for 15, 20 years. But the other one, I still have somewhat personal relationships. But as they grow, they change. And then the people that directly work and provide me with the contracts change every 4 or 5 years. I'm dealing with somebody new. I'm used to working with someone for 5 or 10 years, and they get promoted or retired or they're gone, and so I have to keep reworking my relationships with somebody else. But I'm happy that they're at least still talking to me. We've had some customers out of Minnesota, one of the big chains, got the big red bullseye, target dog. For instance, I don't do much work for them, but they don't have anybody you can call and talk to. There's just no way. So it's very difficult for me to have a relationship with someone that doesn't want to talk to you. So
That definitely has to be interesting. Wow. So Ray, you live in South Florida. You've chosen to make this your home. At any point, you could have chosen, within the last so many years, you could have chosen to leave South Florida. And I know you and Lisa get away. You've got a beautiful place um, north of here in the mountains that you're able to go and when it's really hot here, play golf there, or just use it as a getaway. But I called the podcast Business in Paradise because I truly believe that living here in Palm Beach and Martin County is just amazing. And so what has it meant to you to be able to live here in Palm Beach County? Why have you stayed?
well, I guess the first thing you'd have to say, you're in the air conditioning business. Florida wouldn't be here if it wasn't an air conditioner in town. So and nobody would be here. So, but it is a look. I've had a chance to travel in a lot of places in the last 25 years, and there's really no place like South Florida. It's great. The weather's great. the people are great. Well, it's getting a little crowded in some places, but it really is any economy. I mean, people just keep coming, and the growth opportunity is still there. And in my business with supermarket work, this equipment runs 24/7. So when they slow down new construction, we got to go back and replace the other stuff that keeps continually breaking down, or renovate and put in, tear the old out, put in the new. So it's a cycle that just keeps going and going and going. So yeah. No about a better place or an industry to work in, to be honest. It's pretty much recession proof.
All right. And Ray, now that you're kind of at the next phase in your journey, which we're, I guess, calling essentially or semi-retirement, your time is for the most part your own. What are you and Lisa doing to enjoy life now?
Well, certainly brought my handicap down in the last 10 or 12 months. So that's kind of nice, but there's going to be more to life than that. We know that I wanted to, and the COVID situation kind of bumped me back a little bit because of the schools, is to go out in the outreach the community to talk to kids in middle and high school about careers and trades. And because we know they're all not going to college, and they don't have the means, but I think they all have skills. Everybody has skills. And if I can show them what they can do, that, the light switch just doesn't get there by itself, and the hot water doesn't come on when you turn it on. Someone has to put all that stuff in, and roofing is important and all that. So to me, it's not about which trade you get into. It's the fact that you get into something. And in fact, if you feel good about building something, when we put a store together and we run all that pipe and we go and we flip that switch and turn it on, and it starts getting cold. It's pretty amazing thing, and it's rewarding. In any trade, to whether you're a carpenter or electrician or plumber, and I think I can show and convince kids, and I want to figure out how I can help assist them financially, whatever I can do to move them forward in a fulfilling career.
Ray, you've had a phenomenal career, in an amazing story, starting out with almost nothing in 1985 to a company that employs almost 200 people today, living a life that many people would only dream about. I know you've played golf all over the world. I know that you're a very generous person, and that you also have the ability to essentially do anything that you want at this stage in your life. That's got to feel very satisfying. So, Ray, congratulations. You truly are a great example of somebody that has built a business in paradise. And it's been great to have you on the podcast today. You're a great friend, and I truly appreciate you taking the time to share this with our listeners.
Thank you, Cary. It's my pleasure.
This has been the Business in Paradise podcast. I'm your host, Cary Stamp. We're broadcasting from Tequesta, Florida, and Ray Taylor, the founder of Excell Refrigeration, has been my phenomenal guest today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Business in Paradise Palm Beach podcast with Cary Stamp, founder of Cary Stamp & Company, Principal Wealth Advisors. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the Commonwealth Financial Network. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Cary Stamp & Company is located at 110 Bridge Road, Tequesta, Florida, 33469. Securities and advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor.